Is there anything cooler than a martial artist stoically fending off wave after wave of goons without even breaking a sweat? No. No, there is not. Which is why I was excited to play developer Sloclap's latest adventure SiFu, a roguelike beat-em-up with a twist, inspired by classic kung fu movies. Using masters of the ancient art as consultants to make sure the game is as authentic as possible, it's clear from the very first fight that a lot of attention to detail has been put into the challenging combat. Intentionally designed to be difficult, which means I died a lot, SiFu aims to emphasize a mastery through practice approach and features a unique mechanic in which the main character ages every time he's defeated, although as you'll find out, this is not an infinite process and you can, and will, find out our hero cannot age indefinitely. Intriguing, but is this fighter more kung fu hustle than Enter the Dragon? Let's find out. The core of that satisfaction isn't based on how powerful the player character is, though there's certainly a destructive force to be reckoned with in the right hands. Landing combos, hitting takedowns and sending dozens of foes on an express trip to the hospital all add up to you feeling like a badass as you progress through the game's 5 levels, but it's not the offense that ties SiFu's incredible gameplay together, it's the defense. SiFu's defensive options turn what could have been just an enjoyable, if a little basic, martial arts romp, into a game that demands your attention and rewards your patience. Hitting light and heavy attacks on their own is satisfying enough, but using the L1 button and the left stick to perform dodges, or tapping L1 at the right moment for some devastating parries, helps elevate SiFu's combat above most of its contemporaries. This is deeply puzzling to me because all the marketing makes this game look accessible to your average Joe, not exclusively for 10-time Mortal Kombat grandmasters. I'm not exaggerating when I say that you'll likely need years of fighting game experience to get the most out of SiFu. In the 20 hours or so I spent grinding away at it, I did manage to level up my fighting game skills, but still, even with a decent amount of the moves unlocked, I could not make it past the second level of the game. I'm sure at this point you'd just assume I suck at video games. That old trope of game reviewers being terrible at games comes to mind, and for a moment I even challenged myself, after 30 years of gaming, do I just actually suck? All I'd say in response is go and try SiFu for yourself then and see how far you make it without yelling F*** at the top of your lungs and scaring your housepets' roommates. I have not played a more frustrating, and frankly at times, unfair, game in a long time. And it didn't have to be this way. The developers could have taken a more holistic approach to their audience, and realized different people want different things. Some people want a serious challenge that they'll need to pour hours of practice into to master. Some people just want a quick fix of kung fu candy after they get off work. This game could have catered to both but, for some bizarre reason, chose not to. To give it a proper go you will have to abandon the new area, return to the previous one and run through it over and over until you make it through at a more acceptable age. Then you will work on getting to the next boss, and the cycle repeats. At some point you'll need to go back to the beginning and optimize your run further. This, sadly, means saying goodbye to most of the upgrades you've unlocked. It is a strange, and rather deflating, sensation when your reward for finally surmounting a challenge is being told to go back and do it again, only better. Over time, I came to understand what the game expected from me: perfection, pretty much. You can claw back a little health from flashy takedown kills, and reduce the death counter by killing strong enemies. You unlock new moves and small stat increases as you go. But the only way to truly succeed in SiFu is to submit to its demands and learn its language, committing attack patterns and parry timings to memory. The flow of each fight, where enemies come from, where weapons are placed, how to position yourself to make best use of the scenery, must be rehearsed until perfected. Then you practice, and practice some more, and hope for the run where everything goes to plan. And that's only the first mission. Each location is unique and will see you go from shady nightclubs to beautiful museums. There's a nice variety in the levels and the types of foes you encounter, all permeated by SiFu's distinct art style that makes the most of color and lighting. From the detailed environments to the animations and cartoon-like cinematics, the game looks great. The fast-paced combat, assortment moves, and intensity are interwoven beautifully. You'll be feeling like a badass from the very start. Fighting waves of enemies at once is a trope for any martial arts movie or brawler, and SiFu gives players a number of ways to dispose of adversaries. Aside from your traditional punches and kicks, SiFu lets players use both traditional and unconventional weapons. Whether it's kicking ottomans or using glass bottles as makeshift melee weapons, the world is your playground, mostly. Unlike some games, environmental hazards aren't very prominent in SiFu. While there are finishing moves that involve slamming foes' heads against walls, don't expect to see sleeping dogs levels of interactions, at least intentionally. That's not to say the tables and chairs don't break, they do, but it always seems by chance. My initial run through the first level ended in disaster as the stage's boss, the botanist, made a joke of me, where I aged from around 42 to 75, before he put me to eternal rest in embarrassingly quick fashion. He wasn't so lucky the second time around, and I claimed victory at the tender age of 67. Which meant I then had to start the second area at that age, and needless to say, I did not last long. At this point I had chipped away at unlocking some skills, which is done by spending experience points earned in battle. Although fairly inexpensive to acquire, they only last for as long as your current run does. Meaning if you run out of amulet tokens, these skills are lost. However, you can dump extra points into these which, when enough points have been accumulated, unlocks that skill permanently throughout the rest of the game. It's a different kind of power fantasy. Games like the Arkham series are designed to make you feel like a badass, but that tends to come at the cost of most encounters not feeling like too much of a threat. In SiFu, you always feel like you're in danger, because the majority of your opponents are just as proficient as you are, making each encounter dangerous and thrilling as a result. Victory is never certain, it's earned in the crucible of combat, and you're always one wrong move away from defeat. Fortunately, death and defeat are woven into the very fabric of SiFu. The plot sees your unnamed kung fu ass kicker witnessing the death of their father and master at a young age. You're then murdered on the spot, but thankfully, a magical talisman brings you back to life. 8 years and plenty of intense training later, you're ready to take down the 5 assassins responsible for his death. SiFu feels like it'll be a watercooler game, with those who experience it trading war stories on how they managed to conquer a particular boss after a hard-fought battle, or players sharing tips on how to get past certain roadblocks. Each of the game's levels is structured exactly the same during every run, but the individual experience of those who play SiFu is likely going to be very different, making Sloclap's latest martial arts epic a nigh-on essential purchase.